Today we're going to talk about a shift in perceptions, attitude towards species. A new species getting some of the treatment that another species normally receives. Negative attitudes towards sharks is something shark advocates are accustomed to dealing with. That's nothing new. Nothing gets clicks like the words shark or attack, or those words combined, certainly. And the media usually adds unnecessary verbiage such as horror-stricken people traumatized by the scene from shore, or family vacation ruined, honeymooners' dreams crushed, as if the shark had malicious intent. One incident will recirculate in the news for at least a year, go away a little bit, come back. People will falsely report that shark bites are on the rise, despite, per capita, they are on the decline. Dramatic words and other hype like that is normal for sharks. I'm finding it interesting to see a shift using those words with orcas, especially considering that the orca isn't even hurting a human, it's killing a shark. Since when do people suddenly sympathize with the creature that they customarily condemn? Check these headlines out. Horror footage. Horrified. Horror moment. Terrifying. Slaughter. Serial killer. Slay. Killing spree. Even feeding frenzy is usually used with sharks. I can't think of a time that the media ever said anything murdered a shark before. Certainly don't use the word murder when humans are doing it to other animals. Now, one animal's doing it to another animal and it's murder? Horror footage, really? I mean, it's not even very graphic. I see a few other words used over and over again. Apparently that's also important to get clicks, and that's the use of the word unprecedented or first time captured. And whichever of these events you're talking about, it's not true. Neither of these are unprecedented or the first time. And there's one more thing that the orcas are receiving, which is usually reserved for sharks. Early condemnation. It seems that the story of two specific orcas being responsible for all the white shark deaths is just too good of a story to resist. I want to share a personal story on this topic, because the timing of all this coming up in the news again is interesting. Coincidentally, I had also started re-editing my documentary about the Natal Sharks Board, the shark culling program in South Africa, which I filmed back in 2017, and I was reviewing some of the interviews that took place. Real quick, if you don't know, the Natal Sharks Board is the organization responsible for wiping out countless animals from multiple species along the KwaZulu-Natal coast of South Africa for the sake of beach tourism. Anyway, the film is about the Sharks Board, who, along with the fishing industry, are actually responsible for the vast majority of white shark deaths, along with a crazy amount of other marine life. We'll get into the specifics of that a little bit later, but one more thought on that before moving on. I'm curious, how many people have heard of the Natal Sharks Board, or what the Natal Sharks Board has been doing to marine life? Now, by contrast, how many people have heard about the orcas killing the white sharks? You see, the orca story sells. It's more fun, it's a clash of two titans, it doesn't point the finger at humans, and sadly, scientists are more than interested in jumping on that bandwagon and the exposure that bandwagon brings, rather than exposing the Sharks Board. No, they would rather go to symposiums hosted by the enemy so they can stand on a stage and present their latest publications, or get tissue samples from the endless supply of carcasses that the Sharks Board's nets provide. Anyway, while in Durban, after the third whale entanglement in shark nets, just while I was there filming the documentary, I decided to go interview people who, at the very beach where that ordeal took place, were enjoying the surf and the sand, and were oblivious that that had even taken place earlier the same morning. I was trying to get people to appreciate the extent of suffering animals endure, slowly drowning over a several-hour period of time in a shark net. You know, this isn't like a human drowning. This is a marine animal. It's designed not to drown. So imagine what something like that goes through when, in fact, it does drown. Now, some people probably got turned off that I mentioned the suffering of other animals just then. That's exactly one of the motivations for this type of interview. Instead of allowing people to escape and pretend that the suffering doesn't exist, I presented the idea that in order to go and enjoy the beach, you had to pay a price of admission. Whether the safety of going to a netted beach is real or a placebo effect, in order to go there and enjoy that feeling, you had to first watch a baby whale drown in front of that baby's mother over a 7-hour period of time, from the very beginning of the ordeal to the end. You know, when you put the image in someone's head and don't allow them to escape from it, then it's harder to pretend that the suffering isn't taking place. Fortunately, most people said, no, I'm not willing to go through that. Disturbingly, a young lady, junior high age looking, actually said she thought it was fine because we have enough whales. I asked how she could determine that there were enough whales, and she referenced the orcas killing the white sharks down on the Cape Coast. Mind you, this was back in 2017 when this was just starting, and a certain attitude was already developing toward orcas, to where people up in Johannesburg visiting the Durban coast had this idea that orcas were a menace back in 2017, when there had just been like 5 carcasses washed up on the shore. No one had even witnessed the actual killing. And after hearing that, back then, I wondered how long it would be before people started suggesting taking the matter into human hands, i.e. managing the situation, managing the orcas. After all, we love to manage populations. Manage, of course, being our preferred synonym for killing, merciless slaughter, culling, harvesting even. We humans know how many deer there should be. We know how many wolves, sharks, whales, hell, we even know how many trees there should be as we thin out the forests. And of course, this is all based on whether or not those organisms are using space we want or competing for a food source, creating some sort of a financial complication for us. Because no matter how those wild species numbers dwindle, we always somehow have more room for cows and humans. If a threatened species should happen to be spotted numerous times, whether it be by chance or because the population is actually recovering, God forbid that the recovery plan should work, then it's immediately time to start managing that population again. Oh my God, there's a resurgence. It's an explosion. It's a problem. I mean, the irony of humans protecting animals who need that help because we've hunted them to unstable populations, then react negatively when they respond to the protection. You got to start to wonder what the end goal was of setting up that protection in the first place. And in the meantime, the scientists are still out there fishing for the exact same animals, whether they're protected or not, for the sake of protecting them. It's certainly worth noting that those usually screaming that we have too many of something are those who view those animals as financial threats, not safety threats. Yes, safety is brought up. Fear is a powerful platform. Human safety, a powerful platform to stand on. And whether we are referring to fishermen hating sharks as competitors, or ranchers hating wolves for going after their commodity animals, it's really all the same. In British Columbia, orcas are in a dire situation. Pods are slowly starving to death because humans won't open dams to allow the Chinook salmon to reproduce the way that they should, while at the same time allowing the fishing industry to remove tonnage from the sea. Even in the midst of all of this, you see fishermen pointing at sea lions and seals. They are taking too many fish. even as the orcas themselves starve. They are labeled as unwanted competition. Where's the species to step in and manage the human population? Yeah, being managed doesn't sound so good when I say it like that, does it? In South Africa, the ocean is being plundered, which doesn't make it very different from other places. What does make it different is the amount of money that white shark tourism industry was bringing in. Blows away the gross domestic product that shark tourism brings in other places in the world compared to other things, such as these new fishing permits that were granted, bringing in very little money, yet causing incredible destruction. It doesn't make any sense, and they are almost certainly to blame for the decline of multiple species, including but not limited to white sharks. So what does the government who granted these fishing permits do? Assembles a panel of experts to declare that the fishing industry isn't the problem and the orcas are. Rogue orcas. Serial killers, as Shark Week will tell you. Once again, we humans get to wash our bloody hands. Well, we get to at least wipe them off on the backs of a couple of orcas. Next episode, I dig into the absurdity of the premature publications of these particular South African scientists and compare that data to the scientists who don't agree with them. And yet, you haven't heard from those scientists, have you? I wonder why that is. Did you even know there was conflicting data? One version of the story has received much more public attention than the other one, which brings me back to the point of this particular episode. Let me ask you, which version of the story do you like better? Right? Explains which one sells better. Explains why you've heard the one that you've heard. Thank you for listening. Tune in for the next one.